Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 732 of the Juicebox Podcast. On today's show, we'll be speaking with David. He's had type 1 diabetes for quite some time, and he enjoys jumping out of airplanes. So, obviously, there's a lot to talk about here. While we're talking, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. If you're a U.S. resident who has type 1 diabetes or is the caregiver of someone with type 1, I wish you would go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox, join the registry, and take the survey. The whole thing should take fewer than 10 minutes, and once you complete the survey, you've done something kind for people with type 1 diabetes. You've done a favor to me, and you've done something that might help yourself. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. Well worth your 10 minutes. Today's episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Omnipod, makers of the Omnipod 5. Learn more and get started today at omnipod.com/juicebox. The podcast is also sponsored today by Dexcom, makers of the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitoring system. Find out if you're eligible for a free 10-day trial at dexcom.com/juicebox.
Hey, Scott, my name's Dave. Let's see, I'm 41 this year, going to be 42 very soon in March, and I am a skydiver and a diabetic.
All right, now we're on to it. How do you end up being on the podcast?
One of my friends whom I skydive with has her wife was on your podcast. She's diabetic. And so we got talking about things. She says, "Oh, my friend has a podcast. You should really check it out." So I found you through her, and here I am.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, Dave. I just said we like there's a big operation going on over here. It's just me. But yeah, I was just trying to find people who do things, they're a little more exciting, outside the norm a little bit. And I think flinging yourself out of an airplane qualifies completely. So, well, tell me first, how old were you when you were diagnosed?
So a funny story. I was actually diagnosed at midnight on my 12th birthday. My mother was luckily a pediatrician. So she kind of caught all the signs. And the kicker, the final end breaking point was that I slammed 3 2-liter bottles of water within 5 minutes. And she's like, "You know what? I think I'm going to take you to the ER right now." So we went down and they checked me in, and I got my diagnosis right at midnight on my birthday when I was 12.
Any other stuff going on, or did the 3 bottles of water just send your mom into overdrive?
No, the 3 bottles of water and, constant urination, of course. And I was a skinny guy to begin with, so I wasn't putting on weight. Right around adolescence, you're supposed to start packing weight on and changing. I was not doing any of that stuff. I was still a skinny, tiny little boy. I think I weighed 50 pounds.
Wow.
So something was kind of up. So they took me in, checked me out, and my blood sugar was astronomically high. It was the highest the hospital had ever seen. I think I clocked in around 1,200.
That's pretty high.
Maybe 2,200, something like that. It was ridiculous.
Wow. Did they sing happy birthday to you in the ER?
Yeah, ironically, they did. Yes.
See, what I did there, Dave, you didn't see it, but I put myself in the minds of adults who are trying to imagine what kids want, and that's what I came up with. I would not have done that if I worked in the ER for you, by the way. I would have pulled you aside and said, "Hey, Dave, well, this sucks, huh?"
Yeah, pretty much. I did get a lot of that. Get a lot of that.
Oh, my gosh. So, unexpected, meaning is it in the family?
No, not at all. So my mother experiences some hypoglycemia every once in a while, but she just attributed that to diet. Nobody else in the family history had diabetes ever. We went back generations. My uncle thankfully keeps all kinds of history on the family and everything. And
Hmm.
it was pretty wild that it just popped up.
Did you find any autoimmune aside from diabetes, hypothyroidism, celiac, anything like that?
No.
No. Wow, Dave. About rolling unlucky days.
I'm pretty lucky.
Yeah, look at you, man. Wow,
Living
big winner. Big winner. That sucks. How was it growing up? I mean, I didn't do the math, but you've had diabetes like 29 years. Is that right?
Yeah, for real.
Wow.
So it was very difficult.
Yeah.
My life was just compounded. It was crazy. So the year before, I lost my older brother, he and I were very, very close to each other. And he passed away unexpectedly. So I was dealing with that. And then we got diabetes the very next year on top of that. And that kind of sent me spiraling down a rabbit hole. And then the very next year, I lost my grandfather. So 11 through 13 was not my jam.
No. Okay.
I turned quickly to drugs and alcohol to relieve the stress of things. And again, abandoned my diabetes for the most part. You know, I took insulin because I had to, but I wasn't keeping track. I was running 300-400s all the time. My A1C was around 11.
Okay.
For most of my teenage years. And I finally got serious with it and buckled down. To put things in perspective, technology had come so far, but I was still using the old one-touch meters with the very large test strips, and you had to put like a gallon of blood on them, even up to 2004 or 5.
No, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was
you just didn't.
I was in a very bad place.
Yeah, it sounds. So I don't want to do. I'm not going to ask you to dig deep, but your brother, medical or something else?
No, something else.
Okay.
It was just unexpected, and it was like, wow,
right.
So that's crazy.
And
so it took a lot to unpack that all, and then I didn't really have time to unpack it or the proper guidance or support network to do that. And then on top of it, I had diabetes to deal with too, so I could only deal with one thing at a time, you know, and diabetes was not it.
Yeah, I hear you. Did you have other brothers and sisters?
I did. I had an older brother, but he's much older. He was 10 years older than me, so we didn't really share any commonalities.
Gotcha.
So it, made it even more difficult.
David, your parents together?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mom and dad were together. Not the best relationship, but not the worst for sure. But then when I wasn't even out of high school yet, and my father he had an aneurysm, took a massive stroke, and so he was basically a vegetable for a very long time, for at least 10 years after that. Okay. So I had to deal with that, and life just piles it on, you know. When it rains, it pours.
Dave, I like how you think you were coming on here to talk about skydiving. I mean, we'll get to it, Dave, but you know.
Well, listen, this all leads to it for sure.
Oh, I'm already seeing the path in my head, but
yep.
Assuming you were trying to kill yourself at some point. And but okay, so when did the drug use start? How old? I
think I was 16 or so, and a lot of it was just it's really funny because high school started. I started smoking, trying to mess around with cigarettes when I was like 13, 14, but it really wasn't my thing. And then high school started, and I was in a car with a friend and riding home from school. I was going over to his house to hang out, and his brother-in-law sparked up a joint in the front seat. I was like, oh my gosh, the driver's on drugs. He's smoking drugs. And I'm like waiting for it to get to me. I'm like, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And they passed me a joint, and they're like, Dave, you want something? I'm like, oh, no, thank you. As cool as I could possibly sound. And like, oh, okay, thanks. You know, whatever. It was obviously not a big deal, but I built it up in my head so much. I was like, oh my gosh. So then being exposed to it and realizing, hey, this isn't the big deal my elementary school teachers made it out to be, you know, maybe I'll check it out. And so I had no idea what to do. So I found my nearest neighborhood drug dealer and said, hey, could I get some weed? And the guy's like, sure, how much do you want? And I'm like, I don't know, I've never bought. And he's like, this is your first time? And he was so thrilled about it. He's like, oh my gosh, this is great. Here, don't even worry about it. You don't have to pay for it. Here, just and he gave me, I think, an eighth of weed. And no idea what to do. So I just smoked it all one day after work. And man, it was a lot for a 16-year-old to handle an entire eighth by himself the first time. And I was just out of my mind, which was such welcomed relief. Like I couldn't tell you, between work. And then since my father was took a stroke, my mother couldn't handle it all. So she retired from being a doctor early. She quit, like just up and quit one day. So we had no money. I was working 2 or 3 jobs trying to, help give my money to my family so we can live our lives, and supporting my mother and my father, and doing adult care for him. It was a lot, and it was just a door to step out on the side one day and take a breath, just nice fresh air of nothing to relax. And it was very, very medicating.
Well, your mom walked away from up
and quit. I got diabetes. Then my brother passed away. I got diabetes, and then my father right before my father took a stroke, maybe like a month before he did. She's like, I can't do this anymore. She was just getting slammed and taken advantage of by her hospital, just very outright. And she's just like, I'm not doing it anymore. And she had enough dealing with everything else, so that was her breaking point.
Wow, that's insane.
Yep.
It's just I don't know, it's hitting me kind of hard how quickly it turned on you, because it
escalates quickly.
Yeah, I imagine that 5 minutes before you lose your brother, you're 3 people.
Listen, I was the happiest kid ever.
Yeah, right. Your mom's a doctor and everything's good, and here we go, and just like that, man. Wow.
Just like that.
No kidding. All right. Well, so I imagine when you were diagnosed, they gave you, 29 years ago, is regular and NPH or Lente or something like that. Where were you?
Yeah, they gave me regular and NPH at the huge needles. And I took the shots very well. Like, the nurse was like, here, practice on an orange, and you can practice on me. And so I did that. She was like, I think you're ready. And I was so excited, thankfully, about taking a shot. I was like, this is so cool. So I just jammed it in my leg, like stabbing a knife, and just did it. And I was fine with it. It didn't matter. And plus, being around my mother, she's around the hospitals the whole time, the environment. I was very used to the medical environment. So it wasn't a huge step for me. But
what about so management back then just was sort of, would you shoot in the morning and and before dinner?
No, I just shot before every meal.
You were giving yourself insulin before every meal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't take correcting doses. Like, if I had an apple or something between breakfast and lunch, I wouldn't cover for it.
Okay. How did, I realize it's a completely different time in management, but how did you see your care back then? Like, I imagine, was your mom involved, or did she?
She tried to be, but she was a pediatrician, not an endocrinologist. Right. And so she started attending conferences for diabetes and try to learn more about it, because she didn't really know much about it herself. Right? Because it wasn't her field. So she did the best she could, dealing with everything and trying to learn a whole new field of medicine. But it was not sufficient at all. And then she tried sending me to, I lived in a very rural part of Pennsylvania, northeastern Pennsylvania. And we didn't have the best doctors there. So everybody was kind of guessing and shooting. They guess now and shoot around now, shoot from the hip, but it's come so much farther now. It's more accurate. But back then it was like, well, you got to take your shot, Dave, well, let's try this amount, see how it works, and I wasn't really interested in anything. Testing was the key back then. They said, test yourself as much as you possibly can so you can know your sugars and correct and everything. I just wasn't having that. Right. I'd actually backlog my meter so when my mom came home from work, she would check it and see the date and time that I checked myself all these times. And it was playing hooky a lot with that kind of stuff.
Right. It's interesting, isn't it, that while the management of diabetes has changed so drastically over 30 years, the doctor's understanding of current management, the percentage of doctors is probably going up a little bit, but it's not overwhelming. Like, there's still,
it really isn't now.
Yeah, there's still
I've had to.
I'm sorry.
I've had to fire many endocrinologists.
Yeah, well, it's a weird road. Did the drug use escalate, or was it just weed? Not
really. I kept myself in check, because it was one of those things where I'm like, I'm very aware I'm using this medicinally. I'm not gonna. I get wrecked at like every morning before high school, so I could deal with the day. But it was never anything more than minor drugs and alcohol use.
Were you managing?
I wasn't out there doing crack or anything.
No crack, David? Not
no crack.
Good for you. Look at you.
Everybody has to have their limit.
Yeah. By the way, I'd just like to say here, if you use crack and you have type 1 diabetes, please email me. I would love to have you on the show. And I'm not kidding. Okay. So you managing are you managing stress with the weed, or are you overwhelmed?
Yeah.
How did it feel to not be high, I guess, is the question.
It was just awful, because I didn't have, it was like a nice constant massage every time I was high. I kind of felt, relaxed. Okay, I could deal with this. I'm handling stuff. But other than that, I was up tense. I was, worrying about so much stuff. My mind was scattered when I wasn't medicating myself. And it was a tough time. And like, you had to face reality. My brother's not here. I have a incurable disease that's going to eventually potentially kill me. And my life is pretty much bottom of the barrel right now.
Yeah. And your blood sugars must have been high too. So,
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I was tested 150 once and I felt super low.
Right.
I was like, my blood sugar is low. I need something. And I tested myself with 150 and I was like, oh boy, this is not good.
Yeah. It happens too. Like, it happens to people now. It's going to happen to you. If you've had significantly high blood sugars for a while, your body gets accustomed to it. And then even a normal blood sugar could feel like you're 30. And
right, yeah.
And that's a real feeling. It's like, just because your blood sugar is 150 and you're not in mortal danger doesn't mean you're not dizzy or disoriented or whatever comes with it.
Right.
That varies from person to person, of course, but that's really crazy. So, wow. You just sound like you were all alone.
I really was. Yeah.
You get out of high school. Okay. Did you graduate?
I did. Yeah. I went to a prep school. I graduated with a C, I think. And I ended up going to college out of state in New Jersey. And I kind of rethought things and stepped back a little bit and said, I really need to get my stuff straight. So I did really good my freshman year. I got a 3.98 and then GPA. And then I found my social circle and let it go. And my diabetes got the better of me. And I started falling into old ways. And my next semester was a little bit less. And then the semester after that was 0.98 GPA, 0.98. It was just a awful time.
Yeah. So do you think
struggling a lot with financial, situations and diabetes? I remember I ran out of my regular insulin and just not for any other reason than I think I was just getting lazy and not caring about it and giving it the right attention. And I didn't realize I was running out. So my mother would ship it from the house to the pharmacy there. And, we didn't even think hey, why don't I get a doctor in our school? My mind wasn't on that level where I was able to focus on things like that to make those judgment calls. And so she would ship my insulin from Pennsylvania to New Jersey. And there was about a week I was living on just NPH, timing it right and overlapping my doses just so I'd be able to eat lunch and dinner and stuff like that with no regular.
At what age did you start using faster acting insulin? 2000.
Probably,
was it around the time about when you upgraded your meter, or was it prior to that?
No. I think 2007.
Okay.
Wow. I started using fast acting. Yeah. So I moved down to Philadelphia in 2005 and for work. And I got tired of running home again. Like my mind just wasn't right. So I was running back home to see my endocrinologist in northeastern Pennsylvania, 2 hours away, instead of just going to a Philadelphia doctor, getting a Philadelphia doctor who's worlds ahead of any of these people that I was seeing and getting everything straight. But one day I just had enough and I was like, it clicked. I was like, why don't I just do this? So I pulled the trigger. I went down and I saw an endocrinologist and he wouldn't see me. It was a top rated doctor, a Philadelphia endocrinologist. He made #1 list on some magazine, whatever. He wouldn't see me because I was not on a pump. He only saw pump patients, which kind of grinded my gears a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure my A1C didn't have anything to do with it either. But so he pawned me off to his head nurse or whatever to see me. And she was really she was sharp, man. She was so sharp. She was much better than any of the doctors back home that I had seen.
Okay.
And she walked me. She's like, Dave, this is trash insulin. You got to get rid of it. Use this stuff. She gave me a bunch of free samples. She ordered me tons and tons of insulin, saying I was taking like 70 units a day, like prescription wise. So I'd double up on my insulin and have backups and stuff. And she got me all straightened out with everything. And that's where I turned the page a little bit.
2007 in Philly.
Yeah, 2007, right?
Okay.
So then I saw her and things started getting infinitely better. But then she noticed, hey, all my wicked ways are catching up to me. So I was spilling a lot of urine, protein out of my urine. She's like, you got to go see a kidney doctor, get checked out. So I found out I had only one kidney working, roughly, because of my terrible diabetes treatments. And so I got straightened out with the kidney doctor a little bit. I got straightened out with my eye doctor. I had to get my eyes started going, so I got the laser treatments. I had to get injections in both eyes, and that was in like 2008. And because my eyes, I was getting severe retinopathy, but everything cleared up. They took care of it. I got my blood sugar straight, and I have 20/20 vision now. Except after hitting 40 something, it seemed like it happened over the course of 3 days. I'm now farsighted. I don't know, it's just old age stuff, nothing crazy, but it's still messing with me. Yeah. I can't believe I'm getting so old.
Dave,
so quickly.
My sight was so perfect my entire life. I mean, like hues and contrast and depth and sharpness at any distance. I saw like a laser. Right. And then one day I saw these like floating things. I looked up in the sky. My son and I were having a catch, and I looked up into the sky and I could see it looked like things were floating across the sky. And I, of course, I immediately panicked. I went to my doctor and I was like, I have eye cancer. I don't know if that's a real thing or not, but you got to get in there and find out. And he's like, oh, Scott, you have floaters. He goes, it's pretty normal for your age. And I was like, fix it. And he's like, oh, we don't fix this. And I was like, what? So you just kind of learn to look through it and don't see it anymore. And it's kind of died down over the years. But then suddenly the next thing that happened was like, I couldn't see my phone in front of my face anymore. And I was just like, I can't focus on the phone. And I had to get glasses for reading, and it's a bummer how quick it happens. And you were, but you're dealing with all this other stuff. So tell me first, how did they treat your kidneys?
So they wanted to do they wanted to see, I was going to Jefferson University Hospital, who's very respected in the community. And they're like, well, we need you to try out all these. So it's very convoluted. The doctor they sent me to was just about to retire and move to Florida, like within like a couple months. So he's like, I'm not going to start you on treatments if you're not going to be my patient. He goes, here, take this. Like, it was basically a diuretic that flushed out all the potassium out of my system because my potassium was very, very high. Mm-hmm. He goes, I'll put you on some pills and just slam this potassium 3 times a week, and you're going to poop your brains out essentially. And that's how I managed it for 3 months until the new doctor came in and said, we need to get you on a statin. We need to put a water pill on you. We need to mess around with your dosing. And that was, I think, about a year-long guessing game with treatment and dosage and pills and everything. And my ankles swelling up the size of softballs and figuring everything out. Messing around with my diet, low sodium diet, no potassium, no bananas, potatoes, tomatoes. I'm Italian, and you take that away from me, like I cry about it daily. But we got it all figured out, and everything's been holding good. My kidney functions have actually increased from when I was checked in with it and diagnosed. So I have a little bit more than one kidney, but it's still a pain in the ass.
Okay. Do you think you'll ever have to do dialysis?
Yeah, so as long as I asked my doctor the same thing. It's going to happen because you're going to get old, and that's a road that you can't avoid, because people when they're 70, 80 start showing the effects that you're showing right now.
I see.
And they're perfectly healthy and they're eating right and everything. It just happens because you're old. So the best thing you can do is just keep your diabetes maintained and put that off as long as you can. Leave it to your body to deteriorate it on its own instead of helping it.
I see.
And that's what I've been doing. But I was I pay attention to a lot of the research stuff coming out, and they are doing a lot. The past presidential administration, President Trump had his wife working on kidney disease was very near and dear to her heart. So she was putting a lot of efforts in resources into developing research for that, and they made a lot of progress. And my doctor at the time said, I'll be very frank with you, David. The bright side of this is there's usually big developments in medicine every 10 years. They can bookmark it. So hang in there for another 10 years and we'll see what turns the page. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
Wow, man. At what point did you, or have you, I guess, you said you met the nurse and she moved you up to more modern insulin. Were you able to bring your A1C down, get your blood sugars more stable?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So I got my A1C down from.
Guess what, friends? The Omnipod 5 automated delivery system is here. It's available. The Omnipod 5 is the only tubeless automated insulin delivery system that integrates with the Dexcom G6 CGM, and it uses Smart Adjust technology to automatically adjust your insulin delivery every 5 minutes, helping to protect against highs and lows without multiple daily injections. Omnipod 5 is currently cleared for people with type 1 diabetes ages 6 and older. Omnipod 5 has the option to control it from a compatible smartphone. And it's also available through your pharmacy, which means you can get started without the 4-year durable medical equipment contract that comes with most insulin pumps, even if you're currently in warranty with another system. Well, that's awfully interesting, isn't it? To get started today with Omnipod 5, go to omnipod.com/juicebox. For full safety and risk information, a list of compatible phones, as well as clinical trial claims data, go to omnipod.com/juicebox. And if you're not quite ready for automated insulin delivery, go check out the Omnipod DASH at the same link, because you may be eligible for a free 30-day trial of the Omnipod DASH. Full safety, risk information, and free trial terms and conditions are also available at my link, omnipod.com/juicebox. My daughter Arden is out today. She hasn't been home for a number of hours, and I can see her blood sugars while she's not here. I'm able to do that because Arden is wearing the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitoring system. So right now, Arden has a little device on her. It's talking to her phone. Her phone is sharing her information, and my phone is receiving it. Actually, up to 10 people can share Arden's data if she wants. At the moment, I'm watching a small miss. Looks like she didn't pre-bolus quite enough for a meal. Her blood sugar went up. I'm seeing it being taken care of, and I'm watching it come back down. None of this is stressful because not only does the Dexcom G6 show me the number her blood sugar is, but it shows me the speed and direction that it's moving in with directional arrows. Between the arrows and the numbers and the graph, I feel very comfortable at the rate that Arden's blood sugar is coming back into range. Not only is this great for safety, but it's great for learning. We'll use this information to go back next time and make a better decision with insulin. You can get started today at dexcom.com/juicebox, and you may be eligible for a free 10-day trial of the G6. You can also find that out at my link. These are our results, and yours may vary, but looking into Dexcom is a no-brainer in my opinion. Let me just tell you the rest, and then we'll get right back to David. Here it is. It's super simple. Supporting the podcast can be done in a number of ways. You can share the show with someone else, leave a great review where you listen, subscribe or follow in a podcast app or other audio player. Or you can click on the links for the advertisers. There are links in the show notes of the podcast player you're listening in now. And if there's not, if your podcast player is like a weird one and it's not there, you can also go to juiceboxpodcast.com and click on my links. When you do that, you are supporting future production of the Juicebox Podcast. Omnipod.com/juicebox, Dexcom.com/juicebox, Juiceboxpodcast.com. And don't forget to take that survey at t1dexchange.org/juicebox. I appreciate you checking out the ads. Now let me get you back to David.
I got my A1C down from 9 at the time in 2007 to, I think I was like 7.5.
Right. That's a big decrease.
yeah, she gave me a new meter, she test, all that stuff. Gave me a good pep talk that went a long way too.
What technology do you have right now?
So I am up to date on pretty much everything. I don't have a pump though. I'm still MDI, multiple daily injections. I just pump's not my thing. I've looked it over and done my due diligence, and it's just not for me. But I have a Dexcom CGM, and I have I forget what my meter is actually. I use it so infrequently.
Well,
but I calibrate my Dexcom with it, and that's about it.
Right? Is it a good? Listen, as long as it's an accurate meter and you're calibrating,
it is. Yeah,
fine.
For sure.
What do you have? The G5 or G6?
G6.
G6. Okay. All right. So you have a CGM, your MDI, your A1C's in the 7s now.
No, it's in the 6s. It's 6.3.
Look my last one. That's wonderful. Congratulations.
I attributed that a lot to my wife. I got married in 2013. She's like, listen, you're gonna be sticking around for a while. If we're gonna be building a family, you got to get your stuff together. It's like, all right, deal. So so ironically, in 2010, I met my wife, and I was on a date. I was like, oh, sorry, I'm not doing drugs here. I'm a diabetic. Shooting my shot before dinner, and she's like, oh, that's fine. My father's a diabetic. I'm like, really? So she was grandfathered into the whole situation already, which made it super duper easy. And she's like, hey, take your shot. Did you take your long acting? You take your nighttime dose? Do you need tablets? Like stuff like that. She had tablets in her purse already, like for her dad. Like, so it was a nice transition.
David, you're making me a little sad. I don't think you realize it. I'm seeing your life like this. I'm seeing tragedy in your family. I'm assuming rocked you and your mother. Then another tragedy comes along. It hits you guys again, puts your mom in more stress. She's probably got to make a decision for her own sanity and for what's most emergent, which I assume is your dad's care. And then she quits her job. And then your life gets, you talked about prep school and high school, but money problems in college. So now I'm feeling.
I had money problems all my life.
Oh, did you? How'd you get into prep school with money problems?
So my mother was a doctor the first year of prep, and then I worked 3 jobs through high school to maintain the status of the school.
Oh, geez, you should have dropped out.
Yeah.
But then you meet this woman in 2010, and she's kind of all the things that I imagined that young David needed.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
110%. Yeah.
Hey, you bummed me out, man. What are you doing?
Yeah.
The whole thing looked like a Hallmark movie to me for a half a second. I was like, uh-oh.
Right.
I'm going to cry. I don't even know you. You don't even listen to the podcast.
Don't cry, Scott.
Dude, you don't even listen to the podcast. You don't even know me. You'd be like, what am I into here? But that's, I appreciate you sharing this. It's really, it just can't be said enough that your situation is more common than not. And I think that sometimes the people who have been listening to the podcast for a long time, who are doing great, probably think like, oh, this is what everyone does. But
I'll tell you, if I got diagnosed today, my life would be easy street. I'd be like, oh, okay, I have diabetes, no problem. My wife's there to support me. I have a support staff. I have the online community. Listen, back in 1998, online didn't really exist, especially for impoverished David.
Not at all.
Who could barely afford lunch. So we have all these good Facebook communities who are very strong and very knowledgeable. If I wanted to find a diabetic, I had to go to diabetes camp, and that was just awkward at that age, So it was more of a babysitting club than anything, right?
Yeah.
So now we have all this support, and if I would be in 100% perfect health if I got diabetes today with CGMs, fast acting insulin, the support, and the doctor's knowledge now. It's a different world.
Everything that you need exists now.
Right. Not to say that it's not a battle. It still is. It's a tremendous battle for anyone.
Oh yeah. And everything that exists now can get better and should. But
right.
I'm saying specifically compared to 30 years ago.
Oh my gosh. Light years ahead.
Yeah. It's a different world really.
And it's not something that got gradually better like bicycles. So they added a spring here. They added a softer seat. No, diabetes jumps like magnificent advances, not by kind of getting a little bit better here and there. So, I mean, every 5 years, 10 years, it's significant.
I like hearing somebody who's been around it for a long time having that perspective, because I think if you're more newly diagnosed or newer to it or not paying attention, the advancements feel slower in the moment. But when you have the perspective of real time, like you do, you know that one day it was insulin that was and then it went to meters that were and then suddenly the insulin got faster and the meters got better, and then CGMs, and I mean the insulin jumped again. It's come a long way. And 30 years is a short amount of time unless you're living through it, and then it's your life.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's funny, just on an aside, I found this article from the Pew Research Center all the way back in 2007. And it said in 1998, 41% of adults were online. 57% of non-internet users said that they worry not at all about missing out on something that's by not going online. Like the 57% of the population was like, I don't need that internet. So and now
my family was definitely on that fence. Yep.
Yeah. It's crazy. So when did you, what led you to skydiving?
So funny. It's very bizarre. I was, so I had just moved to Philly in 2005, and I just didn't know anyone. I had a very, very, very difficult, breakup prior to that. And I was working at McDonald's as a manager with my bachelor's degree. And I'm like, I really need something, but there was just nothing out there for me at the time. So I was trying my hardest to find a job, and I finally found one in Philadelphia. So I just picked up and left. I'm like, screw this. I'm out of here. This area sucks. I just need a change in my life. I need to distance my problems, from my environment.
Yeah.
So I moved down to Philadelphia. I didn't know a soul. And I started, I finally got myself a computer. I hadn't had my own computer. This is 2005. Finally bought a computer, and I was like, I think I'm going to try this online dating thing everybody's talking about. So I was on this date with this girl who I met online, and we were talking at the bar, and date was going okay. It was nothing spectacular. And she's like, we started talking about bucket list items, and she brought up skydiving, and I was like, oh, I always wanted to sky. She goes, really? I never meet anybody that ever wants to do it with me. I'm so excited. I'm like, yeah. She's like, okay, well, listen, it's getting late, so I'm going to go home, and you and I are going to go jump tomorrow. I'm like, okay. I'm at this point, I'm like 6-8 beers deep at the bar already, and it's like midnight. And I'm like, sure, you could have told me I'd ride an elephant. I would have said yes and agreed to it.
Dave, did you agree to skydive to get laid? Is that what I'm hearing here?
No, it was a genuine
okay.
urge.
You were into it. Okay.
I absolutely wanted to do it.
Okay.
And the social lubricant made it easier for me to agree to it.
Gotcha.
So I was like, yeah, sure, why not? She goes, okay, well, I'm going to go home now. I'm going to go buy my tickets online, and then I'm going to text you, and you're going to buy yours, and we'll go in the morning. I was like, okay, fine. She left. I was like, well, I guess that was a flop date. I'm like, whatever. So I ended up going home. Literally, like 20 minutes later, I get a text on my phone from this chick, and she's like, I'm like, she bought her tickets. I'm like, I guess I have to now too. So it was one of those things. I was like, all right. So I bought them, and showed up the next morning. It was about a half hour from Philadelphia. Big shout out to my home drop zone, Skydive Cross Keys in Williamstown, New Jersey. Amazing facility and company, just run by the best people for all the right reasons. Wonderful environment, safety first there, and just a really great experience overall for anybody who's thinking about it. So I show up, and she brought a couple of her friends, and we're all talking about it, and they're like, oh, I think I'm going to get the videographer and have a video of my skydive. And I was like, I'm watching these people jump, and I'm like, that looks really, really fun. And I am an adrenaline junkie all the way. I did motocross through high school and things like that, and rock climbing. So I don't shy away from that stuff. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to get one, because I know as soon as I'm done jumping, I'm going to have to go again. So it won't be one of those things that's one and done for me.
Right.
So we got geared up and read the spiel, got our safety checks, got in the airplane. And if you haven't been skydiving ever, have you gone, Scott?
No, I have not.
Okay, well,
yeah.
I'll talk you through it a little bit,
Okay.
so you can come on my journey. picture the very smallest airplane you could ever get into. That's half falling apart. Then you shove 20 people inside and everybody's sitting on your lap. And everybody is very hungover from the night before and very loud. And the plane's shaking, takes off, and you start going up to altitude and everybody's horsing around on the plane. Then the pilot finally says, okay, we're good. The door opens up and you're about 14,000 feet up in the air. And it's a very large door and nobody's seatbelted in. It's really crazy. And you look out and you're like, wow. And then somebody climbs out of the airplane, jumps onto the wing, and then skydives off from the wing. The whole plane shakes, rocks back and forth from the weight distribution loss. And the guy looks at me, he goes, all right, you ready? He clicks me in and I'm like, all right. And then we go out of the airplane and it was just, the rest is history for me. It was absolutely the most euphoric thing ever in the history of the world. There's a line in the movie Point Break that they talk about, some people have to shoot drugs for it or sniff coke for this kind of feeling. We get it every time we jump out of the plane. And man, it's true. It's so euphoric and perfect. A lot of the skydiving drive is for the views, the wonderful, you're above the clouds, man. You're literally flying through the clouds, and it's absolutely wonderful to be by yourself and not trapped in an airplane or have a device hooked to you,
Mm-hmm.
And it's I liken it to a lot of these monks, Tibetan monks, they do meditation for many, many years, decades sometimes, to achieve that inner peace for just a moment, and where they don't think about anything except their mind is just blank. And that is exactly what happens when you step out the door of skydiving. You can't think about the bills you have to pay. You're not thinking about what you're going to do later tonight. Your mind is strictly focused with laser sharp accuracy in every moment passing before your eyes. It is the best feeling in the world not to worry about anything else and keep your mind focused, because nowadays, we're sort of torn between work, our phones, our kids, our, jobs, stuff like that. Your mind's all over the place. When's the last time you were able to focus on one thing without getting distracted about literally anything else in the world for 1 minute?
Right. Well, that's amazing.
It's very calming and peaceful.
Yeah. How long does it last?
So the skydive, the free fall is about a minute, and then you open your parachute and you have, maybe, depending on how big your parachute is, how small it is, your descent rate changes. So it could be anywhere from a 5-minute dive on your parachute to 10-15 minute parachute ride.
Wow, no kidding. Wow, that's insane. It really is. You could be up there that long.
Yeah, it's great, man. Some people do, as soon as they get out of the plane, they don't do free fall. They just open their parachute and they do what they call a cross country jump, which is just to open their parachute immediately. And then you have 20 minutes, half hour up there if you want. Wow. It's really nice.
Have you ever ended up in a tree?
Yes, I have. So I was progressing through skydiving school, because as soon as I landed that day, I'm like, yep, I'm doing it. Like, this is, I'm coming back as soon as I can. So I signed up for the ground school, and they teach all the, the science part about it and everything, ground speed, winds, stuff like that. And then the actual skydiving part comes a little bit later, and you have to focus on landing patterns and things like that. And they had clipped a walkie-talkie on me and another student, and they're like, okay, when you open your parachute, we're gonna have eyes on you, and you'll hear from us checks. Like, I can't talk to them, but they can talk to me, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll walk you through the landing pattern. I'm like, okay, fine. So I did that. Everything was great, and I was just, again, having way too much fun up there. Like, David, you're too low for a landing pattern. We're just start doing S turns and eat up altitude and land right where you are. I'm like, I had no idea what they meant by S turns. I was not briefed on that at all. So they meant, make a left turn, then make a right turn, make a left turn, make a right turn. So you don't travel too far forwards.
Right.
And because I was running out of landing area. So I was making very, very large calligraphy S turns instead of nice and short, tiny ones. And they're like, I was coming right for a patch of pine trees. It was pretty thick. So I immediately fell back on my training, and you got to protect your vital organs. So I put my arms in front of me and made fists in front of my hands and crashed right through the trees. I was fine. The branches slowed me down. No injury, except my pride. They had to come and fish me out of a tree, and everybody took pictures and laughed at me. And then I had to buy beer for everybody at the drop zone because it was my first time doing anything. So anything in the skydiving sport is a first. It's a beer penalty.
Gotcha.
And the thinking behind that is you have to buy beer for the after party so that you debrief. Everybody talks about what you did and they share their stories with it.
Right.
And everybody learns that way from it, you know, and it's a nice relaxed atmosphere.
Well,
and it was productive, and I learned a lot about it. And so the next time I went up, I knew not to mess around. So I jumped out of the plane and I opened my parachute and I got my confirmation check, and I didn't eat up my altitude and get close to the ground before my landing pattern started. So I started following the procedures on the walkie-talkie, and they're like, "No, David, you're doing the wrong one. We're talking to this student." And I didn't know they had two students on the same line frequency. So I was following all the directions for another student, and I ended up landing off of the drop zone. And the last words they said to me were, "Well, we can't see anymore, so good luck. You're on your own." I was like, "Oh man!" So I ended up landing in this development on this guy's front yard, and it was like right around when school let out. So all the kids came like pouring out of the house, cheering for me and clapping and everything. I gave them a big thumbs up. I was like, meanwhile, I was sweating my what's off, and they thought it was all planned and everything worked out. And I got back to the drop zone and I was like, "Woo, I won't do that again."
How many times?
But those are my only two real close calls.
Yeah. How many times have you jumped? Do you know?
Yeah. I have about 3 or 4 hours of free fall time. And so adding up every 1 minute jump adds up to the 3 or 4 hours. So I think I have close to 300 jumps.
Wow. Does your wife do it with you?
She did it once just to try it out, but her excuse was she did it for the scenery. So if we go somewhere else, she might jump again to see the different scenery. But we were in Hawaii for our honeymoon. She didn't want to jump, so I think she's kind of done with it.
Yeah, no kidding. And do you have kids?
I do. I have a 18-month-old boy now and a 4-year-old girl.
Oh, congratulations. That's really cool.
Thank you.
Hey, did you say that you did say that her father has diabetes, but was it type 1 or type 2?
It's type 1.
No kidding. Will you
Yeah, right? Imagine.
Will you do well, listen, before I ask my question, I interviewed somebody yesterday who met a kid in school. They were childhood sweethearts. She had diabetes growing up. They got married, and for years, then the guy gets diabetes too, and then one of their kids does. So now I'm just like, I'll believe anything at this point. But do you consider, or have you done TrialNet for your kids? Are you interested to know if they have the antibodies?
I have not. I don't want to focus on that. If it happens, it happens. I'm a fairly religious guy, so whatever happens, I'll take it.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I'm just interested.
Yeah.
So
I wouldn't want to know when I'm going to die. You know, it's kind of the same thinking.
Yeah. Well, it's yeah. Right church, wrong pew, though. I mean, like, you're not going to, kids aren't going to.
Right.
Yeah. But although you have it's interesting. You've lived more years struggling with diabetes than you've lived with it kind of the way you are now. So when you think of diabetes, it feels like a struggle to you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think it ever won't feel like that?
No. I mean, maybe if I was 100%, but with these kidney disease issues, it's always going to be a struggle.
Right. What if I told you, and this is not me selling to you, but what if I told you that there are algorithms now that if you were a pump, your A1C could easily stay in the 5s or low 6s with much less effort?
Right. Yeah.
Is it not attractive?
Yeah.
Okay. For the device, just the idea of wearing the device, or what else do you think you wouldn't like about pumping?
No, I think it's the idea of the device. I mean, there's a lot of, I follow a lot of pump people pretty closely. Mm-hmm. I skydive with some people that wear pumps, and they're always talking about the line tangles, the bubbles in the lines, the sight that pulls out, yanks out of their sleeping or catches on a doorknob, stuff like that. It's just it's not my lifestyle.
Yeah. No, listen, I my daughter wears a tubeless pump, so I don't think we'd be up for tubing either. Right. But yeah, no, I listen, again, I don't have any opinion about what you do. I'm just interested in your thoughts around it.
Right. So I think when the technology gets better, I might be up for it. But as of now, I'm going to still watch on the sidelines.
That's excellent. What was I going to just ask you? Oh, what are your, you know what? Everyone listening is like, well, you should probably ask him, Scott, how he jumps with diabetes. That seems like an obvious question because of what we're talking about. And it is what I was thinking. So for everyone who thought, how does he not know what the next question is? That is my next question. How do you like to have your blood sugar before a jump? And how do you manage the whole thing?
So managing diabetes while skydiving is interesting because everything is affecting it. The adrenaline makes my insulin more effective. So I easily, if I take 4 units of fast acting for a soda, I easily only need 2 when I'm skydiving. I have to be aware of also potential lows on jumps, because last thing I want to do is be in the air with the parachute on my back while I'm going through a low blood sugar. Right. I could barely do it on the ground, you know? So for that reason, like I keep tablets in my locker at my skydiving drop zone, right, and in the hangar, and also in my pockets anytime I jump, in case I again land off and have to walk back to the drop zone.
Yeah. Do you have a blood sugar you like to be at before you go? Because it's interesting.
I do. Yeah, I like to fly a little sweet around 160.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say it's interesting. Adrenaline spikes some people, and it makes some people go lower. I've heard people talk about it both ways. Bizarre. So if you jumped at 160, by the time you get to the ground, you're much lower, you think?
Not much lower. Usually 10 points lower here and there. I usually have to, sometimes, I mean, it all, again, depends on the day and my breakfast habits and stuff like that, which I normally skip. I usually skip breakfast if I'm skydiving, so I don't have to worry about carbs counting and everything and get it messed up. So I go on fasting sugars, but because I feel it's easier to manage that way. But I blood test before and after every jump, and sometimes it varies. I'll go up at 160 and I'll land. It'll be like 89.
Wow, that's something.
And sometimes I'll have to take a couple tablets before I go up.
Mm-hmm. Hey, is it expensive to skydive?
Super expensive, kind of. So at first it's super expensive, and then as you progress through the sport, it actually gets a lot cheaper, I feel. But I mean, a tandem skydive is roughly $200.
Wow.
I think that might include a video.
Okay.
And then, so you do 3 tandem skydives, and then you start skydiving on your own, but you have to rent gear. So it's like skiing. You have to rent the gear and pay for the lift ticket up, right? Mm-hmm. So the gears, parachutes, brand new, can cost like 10 grand, but I got my first parachute for, I think, $1,200, and that was the full deal. The parachutes are tons of little pieces, and they nickel and dime you for everything. Your canopy that you fly above you costs a separate price than the strings it's attached to, and then you got to buy the book bag to store everything in, and then you have to buy your backup parachute, and then you have to buy an automatic activation device, which is a safety device that deploys your parachute in case you can't do it yourself, and you have to have everything checked every 6 months, which is another fee. But all in all, after you get all that squared away, it's the lift ticket is $26. So the skydive is roughly $26 for me every time. Gotcha,
because you have everything else at this point.
Right. Yeah.
You know, you said something earlier. I skipped by it, but I want to come back to it. You said you like to jump a little sweeter. I've interviewed like 700 people, and no one said that before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it seems so obvious when you said it as like a euphemism for having your blood sugar higher for something. And all I could think was like, how has no one ever said that before? So
that's funny.
Fun terminology. So you jump with other people who have type 1?
I do. Yeah. Randomly, I was at my locker, and this other guy. So my skydiving drop zone is a very large.
Dave, let me stop you.
Referred to in the industry as a tandem factory.
Dave, let me stop you.
A skydiving school.
Disconnect from your headphones.
Set up so very tandem friendly. Some skydive drop zones are literally an airplane hangar and a field, and that's it. And it's just for what they call fun jumpers, people who already have their license and go out on the weekends and bang out a couple jumps. But this one is set up for students and tandem people who just want to try it once. So it's very large, and people come from all over the country to it. Wow. So I was at my locker one day, and I noticed the guy next to me fumbling with his insulin pump. I go, "Is that an insulin pump?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm diabetic, blah, blah, blah." Give me this spiel. I'm like, "Yeah, me too." He's like, "No way." So it was really funny that of the entire world, 2 diabetic skydivers wind up next to each other.
Dave, did your headphones come disconnected? Can you hear me?
Scott, you there, buddy?
Yeah, your headphones. Did they come unpaired?
Oh, Scott, you there?
Hey, Scott.
Hey. How are you?
Hey, there we go.
Good.
Sorry.
No, you started talking about, I asked if you jump with other type 1s, and your voice changed. And I thought, oh, his headphones disconnected, because you were suddenly coming through a different microphone. I didn't know from where. Then I started realizing you were in your car. I didn't know if it connected to your car or what happened. But
yeah, I think it went on safe driving mode. I think it just technology got the better of us.
I was just, and then I'm like, he can't hear me. So I started texting through the app, and I was like, I don't even know if he's seeing these or not. So
no.
Anyway, we worked that out very nicely. So
okay, great.
Actually, your story came right through, but go over it again just for me.
So I saw a guy messing with his pump, and I was like, "Is that an insulin pump?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm diabetic," and he gave me the whole spiel. And I was like, "Me too." And it was very funny in the entire world, that two diabetic skydivers have a locker next to each other.
Yeah, no kidding. I have a similar feeling at the grocery store. I don't know if anyone's ever noticed this or not, but you park at the grocery store and then you go and do your thing. When you come back out, the person who's also coming back out is always parked next to you. I guess it's just like an average time in the store.
Oh, that's funny.
Thing. Do you ever notice that or no?
I don't. I'm gonna have to pay attention now.
I feel like there's like some synchronicity going on that we're generally unaware of. I don't know. I'm just telling you, watch out for it. You pull in somewhere, somebody else pulls in, there's no one else there. You get out, and the next thing you know, you come back out and that person's there. I'm just saying, either I'm in the Matrix and there's a glitch, or I notice this a lot, one or the other.
That's funny.
Yeah. But yeah, that is crazy that you just be, there's not like there's that many people there, right?
No, for sure.
Yeah.
It's really wild.
You guys do you know each other still?
Oh yeah, for sure. We're friends. We jump all the time together. He lives in Maryland, I think. Mm-hmm. So he comes up to jump, and we always text each other, try to meet up. And we joke we're doing world record skydives together. Largest diabetic skydive in history.
Wow. Largest.
Just two of us.
If three more guys, you set a world record for.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
Well, so I feel compelled to ask you. Obviously your answer is going to be no, but if you can give me kind of bigger picture and how you've thought through it in the past, do you ever think like I'm going to jump out of this plane one day and I'm just going to smush into the ground?
For sure, that is always something in the back of your mind. But with skydiving, it's a very, very unrealistic picture to what the media portrays and what the television shows show and stuff like that. There's a lot of science and safety behind every single jump, and it's a whole thing. So with my parachute, I could probably shove it in my book bag and 10 minutes, pack it, get on the plane and go jump. But my reserve parachute takes 2 people 3 hours to pack. They have to check every line set and go over every stitch and record everything, every fold, and things like that. And then we also have what they call AADs, automatic activation devices. So if you're going faster than a certain speed at a certain altitude, it will automatically deploy your backup parachute.
Mm-hmm. Well,
it's happened a couple times to me, but I deployed it myself, not that I wasn't able to, for one reason or another, because malfunctions in skydives are fairly common, but it's nothing that you can't work through. It's very rare that you actually face this real emergency up there. And a lot of it is just through horsing around or not being aware of your surroundings, things like that.
Do you remember the first time you pulled your main chute and it didn't work?
Oh yeah, totally. So it's your main parachute is basically on a string, and it comes out the bottom of your book bag with a hacky sack tied to it, and that's your handle. So you pull on the hacky, and you literally pull out your parachute out of your book bag, and it's got a mini tiny parachute on the end of it that catches the wind and pulls the rest of the main parachute out.
Okay.
Once your main parachute's open, the mini parachute collapses automatically, and then you can steer your parachute through whether you still have forward movement in the air, because you can dance up there if you want. You could put your body in any kind of positions and move around like a bird, and you are in complete control of your direction and where you're going and if you want to be upside down or face down or up, whatever. So if you still have forward movement during your deployment, you could tangle up your parachute lines, and that could lead to a very standard malfunction called the line twists. And some people don't even consider that a malfunction because it's so common. So it's essentially, have you ever sat on a swing at a playground and spun yourself around a couple times?
I have.
That's what it looks like. When you look up, your lines are all crossed together and tiny. So to get out of that, you just have to essentially move your body, twist it around, and do a bicycle kick, and your lines come apart, and you fly your parachute. But sometimes, based on the size of your parachute, you lose altitude. So if I have a whole lot of fabric above my head, and I'm flying a very large parachute, it's less of a problem than if I'm flying a little tiny napkin of a parachute going very, very fast. So I can lose a lot more altitude based on a bigger parachute. So then that's where the issues come in.
Yeah.
It's like you can drive a Winnebago, you'll be pretty much accident free. But if you have that same kid jump in a Ferrari, he's probably going to cause an accident real soon, so it's this equipment that you use and that. So my malfunction happened because I still had forward movement in my skydive when I should have just been hanging out, not doing anything, and just deployed my parachute.
Okay.
I had some line twists and I was like, oh, I have line twists again. Okay, let me try and work out. And then I tried working them out, but then I started getting more aggressive. They started getting more aggressive to the point where I was like a pendulum. Instead of being straight up and down, I was sideways, and I could see the earth and the ground, the sky and the ground spinning above and below me. And I was like, I'm sideways right now. This is not good. And I checked my altimeter, and usually open your parachute around 5,000 feet, a little bit below the clouds. And then you have until 2,000 feet or 2,500 to figure stuff out. I was getting close to that 2,500. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to try out this extra parachute I always have. So I said my prayer and I yanked on my reserve, and it opened up, and it was perfect. It was instant. I had a perfect parachute above my head instantly before my other one was even departed from my parachute setup. It felt very relieving. And when I got to the ground, they're like, hey, congratulations on your first reserve ride. We need a case of beer from you. And how was it? And I'm like, I didn't really fly it. Like, everybody's like talking to me like I'm test driving a car. I'm like, I very delicately made turns and inputs in the parachute to get me to the ground. Like, I didn't want to mess with it because it was my only one left.
That's something I had.
But,
have you ever known anyone who's died doing it?
Yeah, we do lose a couple people in the sport. It's not often, but I've had about 3 close friends pass away. One most recently, she was on a very large group skydive, and when you're in a very large formation, you got to hang on as long as you can to make the formation. So your open altitude is much lower. They open a lot lower but again, these people are all professionals. They're not just some Joe Schmo that decided to take up parachuting, So she opened up low. She had line twist. She was flying a very fancy small parachute. They got more aggressive, and she couldn't get out of it. I'm not sure if she had her activation device on, because again, sometimes sports parachutes, professionals, you're flying your parachute at the speed that your activation device would open up,
Right.
Because they're so advanced. So sometimes they turn them off, and she wasn't able to recover from the spin. She was.
I'm sorry.
She was older. She was, I think, 65.
I was going to ask you about the adrenaline. 2 parts of it, actually. So the one part is, does it ever like diminish or get old, or does it hit you?
No, it's wonderful. I mean, you learn to manage it. It's like you can be drunk, 100 times, but your first drunk is much different than your last drunk, right? So you learn to manage the feeling and enjoy it more rather than just experience it.
Okay. And then this is a little morbid, and if I'm off base, just tell me so. But
no, go ahead.
Does it what's the word I want? Does it increase the intensity knowing somebody who's past doing it? Does it actually?
No,
you know what I mean?
Not at all. I mean, if anything, it just makes you step back and instead of just throwing your parachute rig on and jumping on the plane, you walk through your safety checks one more time and farther in depth,
right?
Because you're like, I just want to make sure it's not going to be my fault if I mess up or screw up,
Gotcha.
Or get hurt.
Well, can you insure yourself against that?
Against
Well, like I would imagine if you're like a frequent skydiver, like getting like life insurance might not be easy.
Oh yeah, right. No, so the we belong to an association through our skydiving sport that everybody has to join up and sign in for, and they provide hospital billing stuff. Like they assist with that stuff. If I fly my parachute into a parked car in a parking lot, they will pay for it. Stuff like that. So they do help, but yeah, I'm not looking for life insurance for anyone anytime soon. Some people have floated the idea. Some entrepreneurs are trying to do skydiving insurance, life insurance stuff, companies, but I'm not one for life insurance anyway to begin with, so it doesn't really affect me.
My consideration there was just, I was thinking about the kids, and I'm thinking about my kids actually. I was like, I wonder, like, if I left to do this, if my wife wouldn't be like, hey, you're not doing that. So, but it's just, it's a fascinating thing. It's very different to me. The idea of doing it is, I mean, it's outside of what I would consider doing, and so it's just interesting to hear about, honestly.
It is. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I enjoy the sport so much. It's not everybody does it, and the people that do it, you connect with them immediately, and especially connecting with people who have diabetes and do it. Like, it makes it even more intense. So I belong to a very small Facebook community group of skydivers that have diabetes, and there's 26 of us so far in the known world, and it's a really close knit community. It's really cool.
What's the name of the Facebook group?
Skydivers with diabetes, maybe? Is diabetic skydivers?
Hold on a second. I'm looking. See if I can find it. Huh. I'm trying. It doesn't like what I'm doing here.
Type 1 diabetic skydivers.
There you go. $26 people.
Yep.
Well, maybe you'll get more.
Yeah.
From this.
There's one guy posted a picture of him doing a blood test under his parachute. It was really cool.
While he's coming down?
Yep.
That's excellent.
He taped his meter to his hand and checked his blood sugar. It was cool.
Yeah, Dave, listen, when I was young, I used to ride motorcycles. I've been 160 miles an hour on a motorcycle, so I'm not judging you. There's something about off the ground that it's my bridge too far. Like, I also, if you told me you wanted to go in a small plane, like, there have been people on here, like, I don't know if you know, Oren Lieberman. He's a CNN reporter. He also has type 1. He was on here and he was like, it turns out we live pretty close to each other. And he's like, I'll take you up sometime. And I was like, no thanks. It's like, that's all right. And
that's funny.
And dude, I grew up in the Northeast outside of Philadelphia. So yeah. And I'm still pretty close to you now. And if you were like, oh, I'd be like, it's okay. Thanks. I don't know. I think
people either know right away that it's something they always wanted to do, or they have zero interest in it. Yeah. It's really funny.
No, it makes a lot of sense to me, actually. Anyway, I would see a therapist if I was you.
Skydiving is my therapy. It's great.
Yeah. No, I hear that. You know what I wanted to ask you that I never did, and I was just wondering, did the weed smoking continue through life, or did you let go of it at some point?
No, I let go of it. It just wasn't fit my lifestyle anymore. Also, I moved to Philadelphia. I lost a lot of contacts, and it was just I had my life. It was just a immediate Band-Aid that I needed.
Yeah,
a crutch to get me through. But again, you're not on crutches your whole life, right? So I used it for its purpose. And I mean, hey, if it's at a party, yeah, I'll smoke, sure. But I mean, I can't even tell you last time I smoked.
Right. I should name this episode Dave Can't Find Weed in Philly, because that'd be pretty funny. I got to imagine it's pretty available.
I'm sure it is.
Is there anything that we didn't talk about that I should have asked you about?
So some fun little facts. The FAA recently alluded that having a low blood sugar amplifies hypoxia. And for everyone out there, hypoxia is, your brain doesn't get enough oxygen and you start acting all funny. And it's the closest thing that a non-diabetic can feel to being low blood sugar. If you Google videos of military going through hypoxia training, it's like watching somebody with a blood sugar of 50. It's ridiculous. They can't put the block in the right hole, and they're giggling. They don't know what to do. They can't itch their face. They can't touch their nose right. And as skydivers, that's something that we have to be very aware of. Hypoxia happens roughly above 14,000 feet.
Right.
And we skydive at 2.5 miles above the earth, which is about 13.5. So we kind of flirt with it. So if my blood sugar is anything but perfect, it's just added to the danger, which I avoid like the plague. But
2.5 miles.
It's really interesting. Yeah.
Where's the where's low orbit? Like when do you leave? When do you leave the planet?
The atmosphere. Well, we fly planes at jumbo jets at like 30,000 feet, right? Okay. So it's got to be higher than that.
Huh. That's interesting. Would you ever do? I mean, this is kind of fanciful, but would you do space travel if it was available to you?
Yeah, I totally would. I think it'd be cool.
Okay.
So, yeah, Felix Baumeister is a skydiver, and he jumped from the outermost atmosphere of the Earth. It was borderline space, and that really opened up. It was very significant because it proved that skydiving could be integrated in spaceflight, and that astronauts, if something were to go absolutely wrong up there, they could technically skydive back to Earth as long as they got within the orbit of the Earth.
I hope we never have to test that, but it's incredibly interesting.
I agree. Yeah.
Would you want to go higher, like where you would need oxygen assistance?
So no, because I've heard a lot of nightmare stories about that. People passing out in the airplane. I mean, they give you a can of oxygen for the halo jumps, high altitude, low opening. But it's not something I want to. I don't need to play with fire and then add more fire to it.
Play with fire and add more fire to it. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and doing this. It was really wonderful talking to you. I enjoyed hearing your story very much.
Yeah, I even did some extra added stuff I'll throw in here. So even though I'm not on a pump, my pump skydiver friends were telling me that it's standard practice to take pumps off for skydives because some doctors warn that the lower atmospheric pressure may increase delivery of insulin, so they can get like a double dose of it. And T-Slim actually has an altitude bladder warning and is only approved to an altitude of 10,000 feet.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, we have an episode about how to fly with a pump, and it's around all that stuff.
No kidding.
Yeah, pressurizes the line and pushes, like, you have
right.
tube pump, and it pushes the insulin through. People get experience lows and then highs when they're flying for reasons that are to do with the altitude. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. I'm amazed you took notes. You don't seem like a note taker to me, Dave, but this was not.
I'm a secret note taker.
I appreciate you being prepared.
Yeah, man.
I really do. Did you have a good time?
I did. I had a great time. I really appreciate you inviting me on.
Excellent. No, it's my pleasure. It was really nice of you to reach out. And if you're looking for another Facebook group with people with diabetes in it, I have one with 20,000. So
I'm on it.
You're in there.
Yes, sir.
I like you. You're in the Facebook group. Don't particularly listen to the podcast. Found the show through a friend. Will you say your friend's first name?
Ashley.
Ashley. Well, Ashley, thank you for
Shout out Ashley. Woo woo.
Yeah, thank you for
Ashley Tracy. All right.
You're just gonna blow her up completely.
Totally.
No, I really appreciate you doing this very much. Happy New Year. It's just barely into January. So how many times do you think you'll jump this year, calendar year?
How many?
Yeah, just rough guess.
About 50 times. That's a low number.
Is it a warm weather activity?
So I actually have a skydiving event coming up on the 12th of February called Freeze Fest, and it's a little party that Drop Zone puts together. We go out. It's mainly to keep our licenses current, because if you don't jump in a certain amount of time, you have to retake your license and everything.
Okay.
So they offer that, and it's a huge dodgeball tournament for everyone, and we get together and have a good time playing dodgeball and skydiving. So February 12th, I will be have my knees in the breeze.
Wow, Jesus.
Again, and then I'll probably saddle it up until the warmer climate, like May.
You dress differently in the cold weather?
You betcha.
Yeah. I was gonna say it's got to be so cold up there, right?
So cold. So it's 2 degrees colder every 1,000 feet you go up.
Oh,
and add a wind chill of 120 mile an hour. It's a lot.
Yeah. I'm not good with the cold on the ground, actually. Being honest, Dave. It's a little snowy today, and I was already irritated. Just
grinding. Yep.
I woke up. I was like, "What is this? When is spring?" It's my first thought. January. I'm wondering when spring's coming.
Oh boy, you got a long winter ahead of you then.
Yeah, I'm not going to enjoy it at all. Anyway, all right. Can you hold on 1 second for me?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. A huge thanks to David for coming on the show and sharing his story with us. And a big thanks to Dexcom, makers of the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitoring system. See if you're eligible for a free 10-day trial at dexcom.com/juicebox. And of course, Omnipod 5 and Omnipod DASH are available at omnipod.com/juicebox. You may be eligible for a free 30-day trial of the Omnipod DASH. Go find out. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon. You know what? I hope you're having a great summer. I haven't said that. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. If you're listening in a podcast app like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please follow or subscribe to the show in that app. If you're listening online, please consider listening in an app. And if you love the show and you just can't hold it inside any longer, go tell a friend, a neighbor, a doctor, a nurse, somebody else who you think might appreciate it. And while you're at it, don't forget, right there in the podcast app you're listening in right now, you could probably leave a 5-star rating and a review for the show. I already thanked you for listening, so I should probably just stop the recording. Hey, you know what? Okay. Yeah,